Okay, so we have a quorum. You got your list of everybody who's attended from the meeting recording. Is that how that works? Okay. So the first item on the agenda is minutes review from April 5th, 2022. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes?
I have a question about the minutes.
Okay.
In the first paragraph, about Majesty visiting the Netherlands, she says that there's legislation to strengthen some of the safety laws within our General Assembly. Do we have any detail on that?
So it says DelDOT works with its stakeholders and the Office of Highway Safety, law enforcement. Governor and members of General Assembly announced a series of legislation to strengthen some of the safety laws.
Yeah. Do we know what they are?
Walt, I can tell you what those are if you want. So there was a
Go ahead, James.
There was a bill about child car safety seats. There was an open container law. There is a bill to redefine reckless driving in terms of vehicles going over 90 miles per hour. And there's a motorcycle helmet law. And I believe all of them have passed.
You believe they're all bad?
All passed. I think they all passed the General Assembly, I believe. All four of them.
Yeah.
Also one for green lights on snowplows.
That's right. I forgot about the green lights on snowplows. Thank you.
What's the green light? Okay, to pass or something like that on snowplows?
It just indicates the presence of snowplow. It's just another way to illuminate it so folks are aware.
That's a good point, though, Scott. I think it's supposed to be the idea that green lights are more visible, but your point is well taken. Like maybe you can imagine somebody seeing a green light and going, "Green means go."
Go like hell.
Hi,
Okay, go ahead.
this is Pam. I think that the green light has been tested in other states and found that motorists can see the light in the snowy conditions. So I don't know the ins and outs of all of it, but I believe that was the reasoning. Thanks.
Thank you. So any other questions or comments to the minutes?
I move they pass.
Second.
Any objections? No objections, John. Sounds like our minutes are done.
Okay.
Who do we have from the public tonight? We've got one person in the room. Do we have anybody online who's public?
There's 5 on Zoom.
So if anybody on the Zoom meeting from the public would like to make a comment, please raise your hand.
Each of them to introduce themselves.
Yeah, I guess we should. So start with JT Fleming.
I can get it, John.
As JT.
JT. Hi, JT. How are you?
Good. How you doing? No comment.
Okay, thank you. Next is somebody with the email Mackin 1522.
Yeah, that's me. That's me, Anthony Alio. I'll be presenting later.
Alio.
Mackin. Oh,
That's interesting. Okay.
on Mackin.
Thanks, Anthony.
I need to elevate him.
Yeah, she just said, can we elevate him? Next we have Mark Deshawn.
Oh, I missed him. I got the wrong guy.
That's Mark Deshawn from Bike Newark.
Oh, Mark's doing a presentation. Okay.
No, I'm not. I don't believe I am. I just thought I'd just tune in.
Oh, okay. My bad. It's Mr. McBride that's doing that. Okay, Michael Fortner.
Hi, this is Mike Portner. I'm with the city of Newark and Bike Newark.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us. And Mr. McBride is first on the comment under, or first on the agenda under new business. You have public comments?
I do.
And you are?
Bill Weller with Sussex Cyclists.
Thank you.
And I'd like to follow up the question I asked last meeting, which was, what's the status of the construction of modifying on Route 1 in Rehoboth, Lewis area, the intersection of Route 1 Coastal Highway with Kings Highway, where the bicyclist was killed about 3-4 years ago. And John was gonna go research it, and
So that's a question for John. Or for Del, General.
Handle at the end,
Oh, we're gonna
wait,
go
I
over
handle
that.
at the end? Okay,
if you don't mind.
no,
Very good.
suspense.
I think that covers everybody under the public comment. Thanks, everybody, for joining, even if you're not making a comment. Okay, next item is new business. Item number 1, bicycle-friendly community announcement for Newark. And Mr. Robert McBride's gonna talk about that.
Great. Thanks very much for inviting us. It was a big team effort. We've been working as a team with the city of Newark, Bike Newark, and the city of Newark put together an updated application for a bicycle-friendly community from the League of American Bicyclists. Most of you know about that. We've been a bicycle-friendly community since 2010, I believe. Mark, is that right? And Mike? And this was to upgrade from our bronze, the basic level, to the silver level. And thanks to all the efforts that people put in on Newark's behalf, we were awarded the silver level of bicycle-friendly community in this last month. And that we joined only about 115 other communities in the country as being silver level bicycle-friendly communities. So we're very happy about that, and it speaks to all the work that people have been doing in Newark, as well as the encouragement that the folks on the Delaware Bicycle Council have given us over the years to keep going and to do things that that make a difference. So that's really the extent of what I wanted to say. I would hope that Mike Fortner would give us a little bit of a flavor of what the city expects to get from the new designation.
You'll have to unmute Fortner.
Hi, here I am. Okay. Thanks, Bob.
Yep.
So echo what Bob said, and of course, there's been a substantial investment by DelDOT in the city of Newark too, and we're very grateful for all the infrastructure projects that have been completed over the last 5-10 years, which have been very significant to us. And so with the silver designation, we expect to get feedback from the League of American Bicyclists. They usually give a critique on areas that we can improve on. And we'll be using that as a sort of a starting point and a basis for updating our Newark bicycle plan. The last time we did it was in 2014. So we'll have it ready for 2024. So it'll be kind of a 10-year anniversary. We'll have a new update, and their comments will be sort of the basis of that, and part of a strategy for working towards a gold level community. And we're very appreciative of getting this designation, and it means a lot to our community.
If I don't know if you have a link or anything, but if you want, I could post something on the council's website Just, you have a link or any type of material you want posted, just have it emailed to me and I can get it posted on our, like I said, on the Delaware Bicycle Council website if you want.
Thanks, John. That's a great help. We have done all this work principally because of the support that DelDOT has given the city, as Mike Fortner just said. And so we look forward to cooperating as DelDOT works on some rather major projects, and not necessarily right in Newark, but the Interstate 95 rebuild and some rebuilds of one of our most important roads in Newark in the next couple of years. So we're looking forward to working with them on that. And thanks again for their encouraging help over the years.
Is there any other ones in Delaware besides Newark?
Yes, we have one in Kent County, that's the city of Dover.
Okay.
And then there's one in Sussex, city of Lewis.
Oh, wow, okay.
But they're both bronze.
Okay.
So Newark's be the first one in Delaware to get the silver.
Cool. And out of 115 in the US, that's pretty impressive.
Yes, it is.
Seeing the application was pretty impressive too. It was mighty long and detailed.
Yeah,
You gotta hire consultants to fill it out for you.
We are the consultants.
This is Mark Deshawn. I was going to drop a URL in the chat if that would be helpful. But I apparently my chat's disabled. So
Well, we can send it to John. So
okay, I mean, Bike Newark did put out an article on its website about the award.
I just enabled it. If you want to try again.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Okay,
Oh, there it is.
thank you.
Welcome. Awesome, guys. Got anything else?
that's the end of our presentation. We're just we're sort of tired. It's been a really really long spring, and especially bike month, and we have still more to do. We invite.
Well, it's another feather in the cap for our bicycle infrastructure here in Delaware. It seems like we're doing a good job. So
Yeah, we are.
okay, so next item is Sergeant Jay Burns is going to provide a presentation on the public collision database.
All right. Thank you very much. I just wanted to thank you for having me. And I know John had asked me to bring this to everybody's attention. After I brought this to his attention a couple months ago, this was right before the last meeting, and I became aware of this website. I will say I had nothing to do with the organization of this website. I had nothing to do with the implementation of this. It's just something I became aware of, and it was brought to my attention internally within the state police as a public portal. And I know after one of our previous meetings, I had several questions about statistics and data that was available to the public, and I thought this was a great resource. So I wanted to, I'm trying to share my screen here.
Yes, we see it.
We see it.
Okay. So you see the website? Because I can't see it. Okay. So in order to get to this website, you have to go to data.delaware.gov, and this opens up a portal to a number of databases that are available to you. This one we're going to be looking for is in the transportation section. So if you click on the transportation, you can go to the public crash data dashboard. That's where this database is found. There's a public crash data map. I'll click on that real quick just to show you what that looks like. And this is a neat tool. It's in playing around with this. This isn't really searchable. It doesn't seem to be, but there's a lot of, it links all the crashes that are in this database. And this database goes back to January 1st of 2009. So any crash that's been reported to Delaware law enforcement since 2009 is in this database and can be shown on this map. So what you'll see on this map is just a link that you can scroll through and pull up the actual location of a crash. And if you put your cursor on that link, it'll give you some data about that crash. Now, again, this isn't searchable. It's not, I didn't find a way to filter this one, but it is a neat tool. If you have an idea of where a crash occurred, you can find some data about that if you know the location of it. And you'll notice on this map, there's some dots that are blue, some that are white. The white dot with the blue circle around it just indicate that there's multiple crashes in that area. So once I scroll in on that, you'll find that that'll populate to several that are kind of on top of each other. So that's what those icons mean. So this is a neat tool to kind of look around. I found that the dashboard, though, is a much better tool to use. It's called the Public Crash Data Dashboard. And if you click on this, it's going to take you to an instructions page, which gives you the basic instructions on how to just search and use this tool. It'll give you a quick splash page that you have to agree to. This is just a disclaimer of the fact that the Department of Safety and Homeland Security is the organizer of this data and where the data comes from, and a few other things. You agree to that, click OK, and it takes you first to the filter section where you can filter through this data. You'll notice on this screen, this has captured from 2009 to the end of this data whenever I think it updated last, when I found a spot on the page that it updated June 5th, I think. So just recently, and I think it only updates once a month. So it's not real-time data, but it is very recent. So we can look back into 2022, we can look through that year and kind of filter through data pertaining to whatever crash we're looking for. So we see here that we have over 400,000 crashes for the time frame that we're looking at since January 1st of 2009. But we can filter this down if we click the calendar icon here. One thing I didn't like about this in playing around with it, I haven't found a better way to do this. If you want to go back to 2010 or 2015, you have to do a lot of scrolling to get through to that date. But if I want to go to 2022, let's say, I just click on today, kind of start at the end and work backwards. And we'll go to, let's say, January 1st of 22, and then we'll go to December 31st. And I'm just going to walk through kind of a way we can search crashes within the time frame of 2022. And we can narrow this down to types of crashes: fatalities, non-reportable, reportable, and property damage. Since we're in the Bicycle Council, we'll scroll down to the bike involved crash and we'll select yes for all bicycle crashes that were involved. And you'll notice that this number, as I'm changing this data in the filter section, it also changes over on the map of how many crashes we're looking at total for that time period. So we can further narrow that down if we maybe just want to look at total fatalities with bicycle crashes. We can scroll back up to the classification and then uncheck all the ones that we don't want to see, leave fatalities. And you'll notice over here on the right side, it shows 5 fatalities for 2022. We can hide this. Once we get this data filtered the way we want, we hit this arrow, we can hide this data. It just gives us a bar graph, which obviously doesn't show us a lot in this mode, But as we scroll through some of these options here, primary contributing circumstance, if we want to break these down into what the primary contributing circumstance is for each of these fatal crashes, we can click on that and now we get another bar graph. This really doesn't help me a lot in this crash, actually, with bicycles. I think some of these might have been mislabeled as far as pedestrians instead of bicycles. I don't know, maybe they did involve pedestrians, but these are fatal crashes, so I think some of this might have just been mislabeled, unfortunately. And then crashes by day, we can see out of the fatal crashes, we had 3 that occurred on Saturday, 1 on Thursday, and 1 on Friday. These pie graphs break it down a little bit further. We can look at the map here. We can scroll in with our scroll wheel and scroll in a little bit more for the area that we might be looking for. We see the legend over here, what each of the different colored dots mean. A red is fatal and orange is personal injury crash. So if we're looking for just the location of these crashes, we can look at the whole map. If we know a specific crash, for instance, my unit investigated this crash right here down in Lewis, outside of Lewis. If I click on that, it'll give me some specifics about this crash from the data table. So I can hit this, it tells me the date that it occurred. I can hit this icon here and expand it, and it tells me a little bit more detail. It's not going to give us a complaint number. This data doesn't give us any demographic information. It doesn't give us any personal information on the people involved. It just gives us the crash specific information that can benefit us as through the state and through the public, and making our roadways a little safer. So we can.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So there's nothing from the narrative, right?
No, there's no narrative. There's no identifying information. It's, I think, a total of, if I remember correctly, about 39 bits of information that it pulls from our crash reports throughout the state that it is capturing. So, and I'll get to that here. I'll show you while we're talking about that. If I go down here to the bottom, now that I've got all this data filtered, I can select this button there and I can show the data for each of these crashes. And if I scroll through here, it gives me a table of all the data. And I know there's a lot here. I'm scrolling through it pretty quick, but that's the data that you're looking at for each of these codes is a specific crash. But to answer your question, there is nothing from the narrative that would be in here.
What is the narrative that James is talking about?
In a crash report, there is what we call the face page of the report is the basically blocks that are filled in and checked off, and codes are put in certain areas of that face page. And it also includes the demographic, biographical information for each of the parties that are involved. The narrative is a written description, the report itself, of how that crash happened, the statements of the operators. It's basically a narrative, a text form of the story of what happened. So, you know, the officers are when they're completing a report, they'll have, you know, was sunlight a factor? They'll check off that box whether sunlight was a factor. Was alcohol involved? They'll check off that box. Was a bicycle involved? They'll check that box off. And there's certain boxes that they have the option in the computer program to check off and kind of have a drop-down menu to select things from. But at the end, we also want them to type out a narrative about how that crash happened and what happened. And that also includes the statements from each of the operators and witnesses and any investigative measures that the officer took in their follow-up investigation. So that's all kind of written in a story form, which we call the narrative.
Is the reason that the narrative is not available through this tool because the concern that it would have personal information in it, and there's no simple way to make sure that that's not the case?
Back to my disclaimer in the beginning, I had nothing to do with organizing this, but that the report itself is not publicly available, and that's one of the things that is explained on the splash page that you have to click on before you're able to access this data. And that's something that you either, as far as the crash reports, you either have to pay for, or you have to pay for to get a copy of the full copy of the report. Even as an operator in a crash, when you're involved in a crash, you're issued a copy of an exchange form. That exchange form does not have the narrative portion on the report. In order to get a copy of that, you have to pay the Delaware State Traffic Section a fee to get a full copy of the report, which then would include the narrative. So that is not something that's publicly available, which is, I'm sure, why it's not on here. But that's about all I can say regarding the this, again, because I had nothing to do with this software or this website.
From a zooming out point of view, is there any public reason why the narratives could not be made available in a in a searchable way through a tool like this?
Because back to your original statement, they do include some witness information. They include probably some some officers include their in their statements, they include they just use maybe a code to refer to a witness, say witness 1 instead of W1, or witness 1 referring to a specific witness. Other officers might type out John Smith as the witness, and they might identify the witness that way. So in certain respects, there would be some could possibly be some identifying information in there, but that's well above my pay grade, who decided that and where that decision was made. That's a traffic section question, not something I can necessarily answer.
Could we spend a minute to talking, because there were I believe there were 7 cyclist fatalities in 2022. I just thought maybe it'd be interesting just to talk for a moment about why maybe this is missing 2 of them.
Yeah, I noticed that discrepancy too, and I don't know, again, I can't answer that. I don't know exactly why this this website is not capturing those.
I know one of the ones, I'm not sure, I know one of the ones that's missing is July 15th in Wilmington, and that was not investigated. That was not a Delaware State Police investigation. That was City of Wilmington Police.
Okay.
Does it?
I don't know. Again, I don't know. This my understanding from this and reading that splash page is that this captures all Delaware law enforcement, not just Delaware State Police, all Delaware law enforcement data from their crash reports. Now, if it wasn't reported properly from an agency, that could be one of the reasons. But then, my question would be, how come it's showing up in one database and not another? That question I can't answer. I have no control over this database. I'm on the side that puts the information into the crash report, and we put it in there. I don't have any control over the database itself and why that is not showing on there. So,
is there something in this tool or something outside of the tool where, if you as a user of this tool, know that the data is incomplete, that you can flag that to either the the administrator of this or somebody somewhere, whether that's at Homeland Security or Delgis or is there a tool right here? Because I mean, we're obviously, we're the Delaware Bicycle Council, we have some interest specifically in where are the 2 missing bicycle fatalities that we know happened in 2022. But my sort of working assumption here is that whatever the problem is, it's not, it's not specific to bicycles. Like, whatever whatever problem we're seeing here with missing bicycle fatalities is probably, that issue probably is in other parts of the database as well for other types of crashes, not just bicycle crashes.
Yeah, and it could be, I'm not familiar with it to be able to answer your question. I've tried to educate myself on this just as a user, but I don't know, I haven't found a way to be able to identify a problem or an error. I do know that the state police, we are in severely behind on our 2022 fatal crash reports. We have several that are still not complete because we've been so overwhelmed with crashes that we cannot get our reports done and turned in time. And the federal government has exceeded their deadlines. We actually met with one of our secretaries from our traffic section today to try to get them data to put into their database because there was a deadline coming up next week. And literally while we're doing that, the federal government extended their deadline until July because this is happening across the country. Everybody is just so overwhelmed with crashes and reports and deadlines that the stuff is not getting put in time. So you might be seeing, and to try to answer your question, you might be seeing a situation where the data is captured probably initially by one system, but because these are fatality crashes and some of these reports are not finalized in the system, essentially, that's why they might not be showing up. So we have a lot of initial information that gets sent out when a fatal occurs, but this data set might be pulling from the finalized reports, which some of those reports may not have been finalized yet. So that could be part of the problem, but I can't say for certain. So again, I'm sorry, I don't have a specific answer for you. I can try to look into that. But again, I don't have any specific knowledge of how this system captures data other than what the splash screen said regarding pulling from law enforcement crash reports. And I know that data changes over time because of the approval of reports, and that could just be an approval issue because some of those fatal reports just have not been finalized and approved yet. So this is one way we can look at these crashes in the database. If I want to look at, let's say, this crash in, let's say, October here, I can click on that and it takes me right on the map. It takes me right to that crash. Now, the mapping software isn't that great, but I can kind of obviously figure out with kind of scrolling in and out a rough idea of where that crash occurred. And then, as I explained before, I can scroll through this data and I can look at each of the different options that are pulled from this report. So we have the day of the week code, and I wouldn't focus a lot of attention on the code because right after that is the day of the week description. And we can spend a lot of time widening these boxes here and trying to read everything, or you can just kind of hover over that and it'll give you a pop-up box of what that says. So you'll notice day of the week code for a code 5 is a Thursday, a code 7 is a Saturday. So I wouldn't spend a lot of time on anything that says code because the description is right after that. So we've already talked about the fact that these are all fatal crashes. These are, did they occur on private property? Was there a pedestrian involved? Manner of impact? And basically, these are all on the crash reporting software. This would all be not a collision between two vehicles, and that's normal. We had one bicycle crash that involved alcohol. We had none that were reported to be involving drugs. Road surface code. We have road surface code and then road surface description, which is dry. Lighting condition. You have dark, not lighted, lighted. So you have all these different options that you can scroll through and looks like everybody was wearing a helmet in these crashes. And it gives you the lat and long for the location, so it can find it on the map. And then what the primary contributing circumstances were for each crash. Again, I think some of these were just coded improperly. If the officer coded this improperly on the report, it's going to be coded improperly on the database, unfortunately. So these are clearly not pedestrian crashes, and I think some of these officers just selected that because I think some officers have the misconception that a bicyclist, they list them as a pedestrian when there's a better option on the report as a bicyclist, obviously. So there's a lot of other options here that don't pertain necessarily to a bicycle crash that we're necessarily worried about. But then you have at the very end your county that the crash occurred in. So I just focus on the search relating to the bicyclist. We can go back here to the search tool and change this to maybe all the personal injury crashes and fatality crashes. And you'll notice this jumps back up to 139. And you'll notice that the bar graph changes obviously to be a lot more detailed. So we had 134 personal injury crashes and then 5 fatality crashes. The primary contributing circumstance is failure to yield the right of way, driver inattention. Manner of impact is, this is pretty much standard, not a collision between two vehicles. These all should be actually the same. These coding here should be, again, this is officer error by selecting angle or front to front or side swipe. These all should be not a collision between two vehicles for this. And then we can break it down by day, of which day is more prominent to have a bike crash where somebody's injured or killed. So this is a nice tool, I think. It's not the end all be all, but I think it was a nice tool that was brought to my attention that can help you kind of narrow down and at least figure out some details about a crash if you know the crash, where a crash occurred, or if you're trying to develop some rough statistics. As we've shown, it's not perfect, but again, I'd have to ask some questions about where this data comes from and why it would be different from the other databases that we're looking at.
Sergeant, can
Yes.
I ask a question about
Sure.
the complete crash report that you need to pay for? Is that available to anybody in the public, or is there a restricted group of people that can request a complete crash report?
After the crash is fully investigated and prosecuted, the crash can be made available to the public. You'd have to go through our traffic section and request a copy of it and pay that fee. But typically when it's in the prosecution phase, they will not release that until that prosecution phase is over.
It's finished, yes. I would expect that if there's any legal action, right?
But there's a fee for it's a I know for the fatal crashes it's $60, and if I remember correctly, it's still $25 for a just a standard property damage or personal injury crash. So I don't think those have gone up in a long time. So it should be, if it's not $25, it's pretty close to that.
Okay, thanks very much for that information.
Is there any other questions?
I have a question, but it's more of a Delaware question.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Jay, thank you for highlighting this, and it's light years ahead of what we had a couple months ago, so that's great. Does Delaware use this information for any of your planning project type things?
Yeah, this is the first I've heard of it, so I cannot speak for Delaware as I am not on Delaware. I can only speak for myself. I just recently. When Jay sent this to me, that's the first I've seen it.
Oh, wow, okay.
Now, doesn't mean somebody else within Delaware doesn't know about it. I'm just saying, I myself did not know about it until Jay sent it to me.
Because it seems like just the mapping part would be.
Yeah.
Definitely helpful, just having that.
Right.
Any other questions for Jay?
Well, yeah, I did want to, I'm almost positive, I'm like 99.99% sure that we do access, you know, I think, and Angie, you're on, like, is that, since I'm on my phone, I couldn't see the actual, like, database, but is that the one that they pulled, that, like, we pulled the information for the pedestrian action plan?
Are you asking me, Pam? Because I don't know.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought I had seen Angie Hernandez on from JMT, and like Anthony might know too, the info that we pulled for the pedestrian action plan, like our GIS mapping tool. Is this the same database that the info gets pulled from?
Yes, yeah, Pam, it's the exact same. We have it live linked to this data. So everything that's on the Ped Action Plan website links to this data. So as soon as that data gets updated, the Ped Action Plan website is updated. And on there is all the pedestrian crashes. So we are not showing all of the crashes, like is what's shown in the mapping that St. Burns was showing us, but it's all the pedestrian crashes. Anything coded as a pedestrian crash is shown in the Ped Action Plan site.
Okay, great, thank you. So yes, so to that answer, if we're pulling it from the Ped Action Plan, I'm 100% sure that traffic safety or Delaware Traffic Safety has access to that database.
Any other questions about the public collision database? Okay, next on the agenda, Anthony is gonna do a presentation on the complete streets guide, a little preview for us, just to give us a flavor of what that's all about.
Yes, sir. Thank you. My name's Anthony Alio. For those of you who may not know me, I am a planning supervisor in the active transportation community section of the planning division of the Department of Transportation. Kind of funny, my email Mackin is the first engineering company that I worked for. So that's where that came from.
Mystery solved.
But getting back to Complete Streets, our executive order was signed back in 2009. There had been a few other attempts at creating an implementation plan. I think the last one was back in 2016. And at the time, we never really came to an agreement about adopting it. So I think like some of the issues there, I think there are certain folks in the division or in the planning that might have been thinking of things a little bit ahead of the curve, where we may not have had enough tools in the toolbox to get the outcomes that we were thinking about having. Obviously, our level of traffic stress analysis hadn't been created yet. A lot of updates from AASHTO and FHWA that are now in play that weren't back then. And, you know, we couldn't, with what the tools that we had, we really couldn't get to the outcomes that we wanted. So I think, I don't know, maybe some people kind of didn't buy on, or maybe one of them. But anyway, we're in a lot better place now. Going back to 2009, some of the objectives of our original executive order were to develop a process that changes the design manuals and practices that we currently are working with, and then provide some roles and responsibilities for the designers and project development folks, either in planning or dots that work on projects, to have a better outcome, both in safety and convenience for all users. Angie's, with me, I have Angie Hernandez, obviously from JMT, who did, you know, most of the work with developing the complete streets design guide that we're working on today. I thank JMT a lot for their hard work. So complete streets obviously means all modes, all users, all abilities. Doesn't say every project, but I think we're trying to lean towards that. This includes obviously bikes, peds, transit users, people with disabilities, pretty much all users, trucks, vehicles as well, all users of the transportation system. And then it was reconfirmed in the last update to the transportation funding. In our design guide, our target audiences are obviously DelDOT staffs, counties, NPOs, and those folks that help bring projects to fruition, both through planning and design. And again, I heard the word not perfect. I think we've pushed the ball quite a bit since our last attempt, but this is obviously a work in progress that we're going to continue to work on and see how this iteration of our design guide works, and if we're getting some of the outcomes that we believe we can achieve or thought we could.
Want me to take it from there, Anthony?
Sure.
All right, are you all good if we just roll through the presentation and hold questions for the end, or do you want us to kind of pause for questions as we go?
It's up to you, Angie. You're the presenter, whatever works for you.
All right, then we'll just keep going through. So hold questions to the end, write them down. We'll have time at the end. So like Anthony said, the purpose of the guide is to get, more complete streets considerations earlier on in projects. It also is a way to really document and formalize the process that does happen a lot on projects as they come through the system at DelDOT, but this creates a documentation process for it. So there is a checklist. We're trying to shorten it down so that it's easy to fill out. It's down to about 3.5 through the guide as you go, but it becomes a really good documentation of this attached with the project as it goes through. So that's another piece I just wanted to mention here at the beginning. So we do have a section in the guide that talks about applicability and exemptions. So in the big orange box on the screen during project planning. And we want people to use this guide at that early stage, so the complete street scoping process that doesn't mean that projects that have already gone through planning in the planning stage to go back and check, for design ideas as well. On the left, where the kind of check marks are, those are actually exemptions of different types of projects that are just exempt from really this process. If they need to do all these different things whenever the scope of that project is to go out and repair potholes. So I'm not going to go through the whole list, but I think you guys understand that the gist. There are specific projects and funding types and programs that DelDOT runs that cannot include complete considerations, complete streets considerations. They're very, scoped and specific to what they can and cannot do. So how to use the guide? We did try to make it user-friendly with design engineers and planners in mind. Made it a stepped process. There's charts, there's graphics, there's text, kind of a variety of different ways of communicating information. This is not a design standard. It does not supersede or trump any approved design standards. This is a guide to give ideas to try to help, in that early planning process. So we did include a variety of criteria to help kind of focus in whenever you are looking at a project, that you really understand the context of the project area and the needs. And that all helps to guide you towards the street types that you should consider. And then within those street types, what kinds of design considerations should be given. So the list on the left kind of goes through that criteria, which I'll show you an example later that will hopefully, kind of bring this all together. So it is a step process. So step one, start with just identifying your roadway functional classification. So right there off the bat, knowing your classification helps to kind of narrow down then the context zones and to understand the potential street types. So the context zones, we've brought in kind of land use into this decision. So urban, suburban, or rural. There's no mapping that goes along with that context zone. We tried to describe the context zones. We use some of the state levels investment to help inform which context zone you should use. We talk about the land use development pattern. So we've given people guidance on how to kind of identify the right choices that they should pick and just categorize the street. After you've identified the roadway classification and the context zone or zones, there could be multiple in any given corridor. Then you get to the street types. So there's 10 different street types within this guide that are all kind of just trying to bunch together considerations. So once you get to step 3, you may have one street type that you're considering. You might have 3 or 4 that you're between. So then once you start looking at the street types in each kind of section that's written up on the street type, you get some more criteria that you can also then plug in to better choose which street type makes the most sense for your project. And that's where kind of really get into those design options and considerations during step 4. So like I said, there are 10 different street types. We tried kind of looking holistically at roads that the state owns. We expanded that scope a little bit in discussions with the focus group that helped develop this. We had just different people around the department that were helping out. DTC was involved with this. And we decided to include other types such as the shared street and non-motorized street. Even though it's probably not likely going to be a state-owned road, there are some streets in the state that this could be a helpful consideration for, and possibly down the road a state route could be considered also if there were some major changes to the street being considered. So we went from kind of the downtown urban core through main streets, through commercial areas, through residential, low density highways, and then we got to those shared streets and non-motorized streets as well. So we tried to kind of categorize, all the street types into these 10 buckets. But again, it's a guide. They're buckets of consideration. It's not always going to be, this is it, that we're done. There's nothing that can fall out of these or be a different consideration. This is just to kind of help guide and make decisions. So here's an example I just clipped from the guide. This is for the downtown urban core. So each street type again has its own section that we include a photo of an existing street in Delaware that really hasn't had that complete street transformation happen for it yet. That kind of gives you a good example of what does the street look like to compare against the street you're considering. We listed a few more representative places spread throughout the state as well for each example, just to give multiple examples so people would, hopefully find one that they had some familiarity with or could relate their project to. On the right, this is where we have that additional street type criteria that we tried to categorize, which streets would fit into a main street based on the functional classification, the target design and posted speed, your daily traffic, the context of land use, the development form. Again, the state level's investment comes in here, and then the mobility needs that you're identifying for your project. So whenever you're looking between these multiple street types, you have this level of criteria and some photos that can help you pick. I think this example is closer to my street, or both of these could apply. So it's just, again, to give some more context for decision making. And then within each section, we also have a graphical rendering of what a complete street solution could look like for that street type. We could have made 15 different renderings or, straight desire to do that. We wanted this to be more of a graphical inspiration, not a, prescriptive, this is how things should be designed. We did try to pull ideas that would inspire people to, kind of think outside the box. So this image here, we showed a protected intersection. Again, this is the downtown urban core where we show, some serious enhancements for transit with good bike lanes, the high vis crosswalks, trees, landscaping, and then we tried to kind of mimic the developers corresponds in the guide to another little level of detail on how to make decisions. So I think like the number 2 that says something about the protected intersection, and we have a little write-up about that. We wanted to call out in the these renderings also to, again, just options should be considered in the streets. So I'm going to kind of blast through. We put them all in here, but all of our ideas that could be considered. And we tried to be real bike lanes on our main streets, but we also know that main streets are really hard to get two-way protected bike lanes. So in reality, a lot of our main streets have to make this choice of having one protected bike lane for one way and then doing something in the street with bikes and traffic calming for the other way. So while, we really wanted this to have a bike lane over here, we also thought it was important to be grounded in a lot of the constraints that do occur in the state. This is office and light industrial, where, we think that the shared use path is a better option. Development is more spread out. So it's just, you have the right of way a lot of times to put in the pathway here, and putting the pathway in better serves the users in this scenario. We also are showing, reducing lane widths, trying to get more grass and medians and trees and lighting and things like that. The commercial strip corridor, this is always a challenging road in the state, but we did show here having shared use path on each side of the strip corridor. We talked about how to kind of cross at the intersections and important buffers to keep between parking areas and the shared use paths, and then buffers between the shared use paths and the road, and talking about, the median strips and things like that. Urban residential. Here, we also had a couple different options of kind of overkill and then, what's more based in reality. And here we thought, let's really focus on the adding pedestrian space and calming the streets so that bikes can share the lanes, these types of situations. Again, it's not a one size fits all. It's just something to consider. The suburban rural, we wanted to show something different than full, protected lanes. So we went with just showing the buffers. A lot of these streets are kind of restriping projects. So there's an opportunity to do this more than a full capital project with adding full curbs and everything else. So we thought that was a good option to show as well. The suburban rural residential with the low volume. Again, we showed some traffic calming with the chicanes at the mid block and then kind of the corner extensions at the intersection. And showing that you can also incorporate some green stormwater management there with rain gardens, bioswales, things of that nature. But again, trying to pinch down the intersections to make cars turn slower and make it a more comfortable experience for people walking and biking and driving their cars as well. The last one that was a rendering is the low density highway. We've got a lot of these roads in the state as well. We talked about the need for ditches along these roads and kind of pushing the paths back away from them. We gave the option in here too, talking about grass shoulders, which is what number 2 is pointing out. That this is something that DelDOT wants to explore along some roadways so that it kind of pulls the roadway in and does some traffic calming, but it still functions as a shoulder that can bear that. But on the other side of the road, we show just a normal striped shoulder. So again, options is what this is showing. I don't know that we'd ever build a road that has a normal shoulder on one side and grass on the other. It would probably be one or the other, but again, this is an illustration to show some ideas, not, full concept plans. The shared streets and non-motorized streets, we decided not to render these because they are very unique to themselves and to the context and the goals of the street. So in this section, we mostly focused on examples that have been implemented elsewhere. and just talk through some of those considerations. There is criteria as well for these streets, but we just pulled examples from elsewhere to kind of inspire there. Section 4 of the guide, I'd say this is where the engineers will have their most fun. There's a lot of charts. The chart on the right, this should be a familiar chart to some of you. This comes from Federal Highways for selecting bike types. So we did bring some design guidance from other guides that we thought was really helpful into this guide, but then we also created some customized stuff too, which is the example chart on the left. So we have a whole section talking about the zones of a roadway and how to make considerations within that zone. And then this one is just an example from the active zone that we've called it of the road. And you can see across the top, there's the different street types. And then we have in the rows, all of the different design considerations that could be considered in each street type. And here again, we wanted to have an extra layer of flexibility and guidance. So instead of making it a yes, no, we made this high priority, encouraged, allowed, and not appropriate kind of categorization to explain the appropriate features and things that we want people to consider within the different street types, but giving it that level of priority of, this is allowed, but not super encouraged versus things that are high priority that we really want to see in these places. So it just helps, again, to kind of better guide decisions, but not completely control and restrict, giving designers that flexibility in making the right decisions. So our next steps overall is to conclude the public review, which we posted for 30 days, but we're going to leave it up, especially after talking with you all today. We want to give you guys a couple weeks to get any comments back in to us on the guide. And then whenever we get those comments in, kind of seeing what we can revise based on the comments we receive, and then rolling this guide out internally at DelDOT for use on projects. It will always be a public resource posted online, but the rollout is really an internal rollout goes. Are people using it? Do they understand it? Is it as intuitive as we had hoped? There's probably going to need to be some trainings to get people to really understand, how to use it. And then that monitoring the success of it. Is it working? That DelDOT has that are always getting up. Dated too. So kind of waiting to see where some of the, based on how things are going down the road. So I told you I'd blast through it. But now we'll take any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Oh, James Wilson has one.
So there's some great stuff in here, Angie, as I told you the other day. I think this is a significant potential resource. I think the renderings are just, designers, I think, are mostly visual people, and those renderings are really evocative, and I think that alone makes this a worthy effort. I think there are, a few areas that are really great, a few others that could be, made a little bit better. The one that if there's any opportunity for you to go back and tweak a little bit is that on the commercial strip corridors. As everybody on the council knows, the deadliest stretch of road for cyclists in Delaware is Coastal Highway between Lewis and Rehoboth. Those types of roads, Kirkwood Highway, Pulaski Highway, Concord Pike, DuPont Highway, those are also where our pedestrian fatalities are overwhelmingly happening. And this guide is not a magic solution to all of that, but it should not. I hope it doesn't get out there without wrestling at least a little bit with that. I mean, for both cycling and walking, we want better main streets, we want better downtowns, we want better rural highways. There's all kinds of places we want improvements, but the most urgent category where it's sort of a life and death thing is these commercial strip corridors. And again, not asking you to solve all of Delaware's problem with commercial strip corridors, but at least, try to, engage with that problem a little bit more than the current draft guide does.
Yeah, I think language is possible to put some language in there about, driveway conflicts. And I think, I don't know, I gotta run it by Anthony. We gotta work on the wording, but to your point of saying these are, safety concerns for people biking and walking. These are where our crashes are occurring. So that designers have that in their mind, that these, are like you said, really important. Every conflict becomes a decision point. We can't just, breeze over it. We need to take the time to really consider the best option we have.
Yeah, we agree. We agree, James. And especially, on those types of corridors, it's a lot about context. It's a lot about figuring out the pedestrian and bicycle circulation patterns and try to, make them easier or less cumbersome and also safer. But it's, all those places are different, and somebody like designer really has to get into the nuts and the bolts of what's going on there, non-motorized wise. So you have to look at those things, or the designer should be involved, and that's where like the data, the accident, the crash data, the usage patterns comes into play. But it's obviously not one size fits all.
So Anthony, is this document going to be integrated like in the entrance plan review process and that type of thing too?
So that's the intent for them to use this type of this type of data for them. It's mostly, for obviously our project designers and our project managers, getting it into the subdivision section shouldn't be as difficult. But there's still groups that are still, I guess, striping high stress bike lanes on roads that we were like, why would somebody put a symbol out there if we're trying to get away from this? Hopefully with the integration of the complete streets plans, that things like that go away.
Any other questions for Anthony or Angie? So when do you? We saw the rollout process there. Like, when is that? What's the timeline for that? You guys think?
So if we leave the comments open for another week or 2 weeks, we're thinking it'll take a month after that. I'm hoping.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks for your time, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, John, we're on to old business. Did we hear anything? Okay, so first item is the infrastructure grant update, and did we get any traction on Newcastle County?
I got a couple updates.
Okay.
So for the grant, the first update is about the 2022 grant that was awarded to Newcastle County at the April 5th meeting. Contacted Newcastle County and they accepted the $10,000, and in which they have submitted all the documents needed in order for DelDOT to transfer the funds to Newcastle County so they can begin their feasibility study for the Falkstone pathway upgrade.
Okay.
So, and
Awesome.
Now they did apply for a $15,000 grant, but they have worked that out on their own to make up the difference.
Okay. Great.
So, and then for the second update for the grants is after the April 5th meeting, I had sent an email to all municipalities for a call of grant applications for the 2023 Cycling Infrastructure Innovation Grant. So that email was sent out to almost 100 email addresses from representatives from all of the municipalities, and also sent an application to the Dover Kent MPO asking for their assistance on if they know of a bike project in a municipality to possibly refer the municipality to the grant to see if that grant is applicable for that municipality to apply. And the deadline for the grant applications is August 25th.
Okay, so so the rest of our timeline then will be, so we want to start following up with people July, August timeframe, just as a reminder that the thing is out there, the application. A lot of times we get down to like the last 2 weeks and we're doing that. So if we could try to do that, if you have contacts at any of these places, please reach out. July, beginning of August to get that going. And then, so we would have all the applications for the October meeting, is that right?
We would.
Or we would start the committee.
We would start the committee typically in
September. Okay.
And start the, hopefully the interviews either mid to late September, maybe early October. And then the working group would meet after the interviews to make their recommendation. And then at the December meeting would be when the council would award.
We have our committee set up already.
Yes.
All right.
And if you want, I can send you the information that has all the names and email addresses and phone numbers of the city and town officials that were.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay.
All right.
John, are you going to share that list with the entire working group?
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Okay.
You want just the working group or the entire council? Doesn't matter. Doesn't hurt.
We're going to start looking at these places in September or something. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
The list that John was talking about was who was sent to. So what we want to try to do is just follow up with people that you might know on that list to try to gin up interest.
Okay, I'll send it to everybody because there may be people who aren't on the working group that might know.
Yep.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Does that list include representatives from the counties as well?
I'm sorry. Yes, it includes all 3 county offices. So, yes, so it went to Newcastle, Kent, and Sussex.
Thank you.
Any questions on the grant update? Okay, John. Who was that? Was there a question?
Any question on the what date?
The grant update.
Oh,
We just got done talking about.
no,
All right, next is last item for this evening, the priority bikeway projects update.
All right, I have just a couple of updates. I think Anthony is still on the meeting. Yesterday, they had a public workshop for the West Street project. This was an outdoor event, but unfortunately the weather made it impossible to have it. So that public workshop is being rescheduled.
That's West Street in Dover?
Yeah, West Street, yeah.
Okay.
They're extending. Oh, are you there, Anthony? Did you want to?
I am, yep, you're right. And we're looking at last Wednesday of June. So that's the 28th. And then we're gonna have, instead of being outside, we'll have the home base somewhere in Del Dot. We still have to reserve a room. And then we'll also go to the transit center to try to get input there. But just in case it rains again, we'll have the public meeting inside.
Oh, that's the street that goes along the tracks. Okay.
Correct. So we built the path on the northern side. So this section goes from the transit center to Dover Street Park and connects to the communities into the south to give those folks access to the system.
Yeah, awesome.
And then the last update was, as Bill mentioned, was brought up at the last meeting, and what Bill had brought up during public comment. The SR1 Kings Highway intersection, where, as Bill had said, a bicyclist was fatally injured, was being redesigned to take out the sweeping ramp and make it more of a T intersection in order to reduce vehicle speeds and to make it and enhance safety and awareness between vehicles turning onto Kings Highway, between cyclists and motorists. So this project was in design, and in discussing with project development had to task their in-house designer to another project. So this project was being designed in-house by one of our engineers, but that engineer was tasked to another project. And at this time, project development is looking for another mechanism to deliver the improvements at that intersection. And based on my discussions with project development, this could be either having it done under another program funding, such as a pave and rehab, or possibly another PD South contract. But they are hoping to do a final design and find an alternative contract to construct these improvements before the summer of 2024. So that's the latest update that I received from project development, is that it was being designed in-house, but the in-house engineer that was working on it was assigned to another project, but project development South is trying to find another mechanism to get this project completed and constructed before 2024. I'm sorry, before the summer of 2024.
Yeah. I'm probably not gonna work on it this summer because
I mean, I know they had survey done, so I don't know how much of the work was completed before the engineer was assigned to another project. But hopefully, like I said, they find that alternative in order to get that project started. So.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
Is there something that the Bike Council can take on as a recommendation or a motion or encouragement or something? I mean, we're now approaching 4 years since this fatality occurred. And nothing's occurred other than the ghost bike put up at the intersection. There's been nothing done to make it safer. Is there anything that the Bike Council can do to not let it, to kind of push it back up on the front burner and get it moving?
If somebody on the council wants to make a motion that we send something to Del Dot to ask them to make it I don't know, like what I don't know what that would be. Pamela, are you still on?
This is Paul. Let me make a recommendation. We can get a hold of Senator Pettigen, a couple of our representatives, and what's this? Well, it's kind of about, it's getting toward the end of this legislative session, but at least we could get a bill introduced by the end of June to approach this situation, project, call it what you will. But I agree with you, Bill. It's just going to languish and it's going to fade off into the sunset, and maybe it already has. But something's got to be done.
Well, I think if you wanted to, Scott, with the approval of the council, they could get you to write a letter of support for this project, just to, reiterate the importance of it.
Right.
Make sure that, it's not gonna just wants to fade away, so to speak. So,
right.
Obviously, make it sound better than I explaining it. You get the gist.
I mean, do you think that we need do we need a council to actually take an action on that, or is that something that we
think
can
we
just?
should. It's
Okay.
easy, right?
Okay.
So make a motion that, I make a motion that we draft a letter, or that you draft a letter. Scott.
And who?
Scott drafts a letter.
Scott drafts a letter to
the Secretary of Transportation.
Okay.
Stating that, that we strongly encourage that we move forward with all due haste to remedy the unsafe traffic condition at the intersection of Kings Highway and Route 1, where there was a notable fatality.
So I have a question. So this council is.
First of all, there's a motion on the floor.
Well, but there's a question on the
Yeah,
motion.
there's a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this council has been very supportive of the SR1 low stress bikeway project, which has, I think that got off the ground something like the spring of 2020. The engineering firm was hired, but here we are 3 years later with, it's sort of being in kind of an undefined planning state. If I was to say, we want progress on coastal highway bicycle safety, I would like to see the council pay some attention to seeing what we can do to move that ahead, more than the smaller project at Kings Highway.
Yeah, but
Doesn't have to be one or the other.
So if you want to do both, then I'd ask an amendment to have the letter be about that one as well.
Just include this Kings Highway intersection with the update and get the Route 1 study going, or whatever you call it. Put it all into one.
Well, but Walt, to have it not languish forever as was put forth, which I don't necessarily, I hope it's not. To put it into a bigger project is putting several additional hurdles in the way of getting a simple task accomplished. And so I think it ought to have focus. And I think if a second letter wants to go out that even highlights this same intersection as part of the whole Route 1 problem, well, that's fine. But somebody was killed. I drive by that intersection. There's no improvements, no changes that I could see. Maybe there was some lining, or there's some paint changes? I think there might have been.
Nothing material.
Yeah, but it's, you know, it's one of the busiest roads for cycling and one of the busiest roads for cars. And, you know, you'd hate to see a second one happen there. And,
I'm just aware of the history with Coastal Highway. I mean, there've been arguments about what we do about the Coastal Highway roadway going back to the 1990s, because it's just, you know, this continuing thing. And you know, it's like, but, you know, bike lanes and bus lanes and, you know, all these sorts of things that have been proposed within the roadway. But arguably after 20 or 30 years of all this sort of tinkering around the edges, we still have, you know, the most dangerous roadway for cycling in the state. I guess I'm just a little worried that this is another, you know, tinkering around the edges of Coastal Highway.
I thought that the Kings Highway intersection was an acute issue.
yes,
And what James is talking about
it's a chronic issue.
is a chronic issue.
Yep, and I think both should be addressed, but I think the acute issue, I made a motion. I'd like to solicit a second and a vote.
What's the motion?
The motion is to send a letter to the secretary about that particular intersection. Using the word perhaps urgent.
I think we're gonna ask for more resources be applied to
Yes.
this, to the project.
Yep. Scott can do a great job. Thank you all.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. So we need to vote. Mr. Hartley?
Well, I think, is anybody object?
I would just say, are there any objections?
Oh, okay. Are there any objections?
I'm going to abstain.
James is abstaining. Okay, no objections.
Scott, thank you very much. In advance.
Thank you.
So I will write that letter and work with John on getting it to Nicole.
And just to support James, maybe at the end, maybe talk about the chronic issue. But, you know, we got an urgent issue. That's what we want to move on, getting resources, getting stuff done. And even if it's doing little stuff along the way, you know.
Tom, is the proposed design, would it address a similar situation where you have a cyclist in the bike lane on Coastal Highway and somebody is changing lanes into the turning lane and crosses the bike lane?
So I think, James, if you guys can still hear me, it's Anthony. There is a concept that was developed because that was a really long merge to get into the right lane at a high speed. So I think the concept tightens that up. You'll still have a conflict, I believe, where there's going to be a conflict point where cars are going to cross.
Yeah.
I know.
Go ahead, Anthony. I'm sorry.
No, I just say a concept has been developed. It'd be great if you guys could review that. I don't know. This is the first I've heard that it's stalled or what actually happened or didn't happen to it. But I agree that you should try to fix this problem because it's close. I mean, we've been struggling with the Route 1 low stress bike facility for a long time, and we have a plan going on now that we just keep hitting walls.
So Anthony, so I'm tough. I can take it. So give me your candid feedback when I say I have some concern here that the design concept is not a robust solution to the problem that we clearly have. So you've got a bike lane on a super high speed road, and you've got travel lanes on one side and then a turning lane on the other, and people cross the bike lane in order to go from the travel lane to the turning lane. Do you think that this is a robust, that this is a not negligible effort to mitigate that risk?
I think it is definitely a safety improvement because at that right turn lane on the angle it is, you can make the right turn at a high speed. And if you tighten it up, then you've got to slow down. And I think that's the major improvement.
Okay.
Because
thanks.
it is a very high speed right turn lane. You don't even have to slow down. You go right into Lewis. Before you know it, you're like, oh man, now I'm going fast. But you
Okay.
can't realize that on Route 1.
Thanks.
Walt will tell you.
That's right. You can make that turn real easy, 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Walt does it every day.
See if that shows in the minutes.
Is that on our list of priority projects? Is all of the Route 1 beach James issue with that whole?
Well, we had a presentation from somebody.
Leah, probably our WRA has done presentations.
Whitman. Okay, it was Whitman.
Yeah.
And they were talking about looking at the streets on the backside and everything. So James, your concern is like after that last presentation, we haven't seen anything in a while. Is that your concern?
No, my concern is that I mean, I take Anthony's word, that this it represents an improvement, but like the conflict is still there, right? I mean, it's still, a bike lane in between a high-speed travel lane and is the turning lane, the turning is still going to be there, right, Anthony?
Yeah, you're still going to be able to, I think you're going to still be able to make a right turn in there. Yes.
So, I mean, ultimately, I'm not a civil engineer. Like, I don't know, my ability to sort of put a crash mitigation factor on, okay, what if we change the radius, make it so that, you can't do it at 60 miles per hour. It's a sharper turn. People have to make, people have to make different speed types of turns. Maybe there's a crash mitigation factor associated with that. I'm just offering a sort of non-civil engineering intuition that, we're talking about a relatively small, less than 1 crash mitigation factor. And, it's still leaving us with this roadway, which is fundamentally unsafe, even with this change. And the context for this is just that, we've been talking about Coastal Highway for decades and just, we put millions into the sidewalk and then we put a bike lane in, a bus lane, and there've been all these sort of, things that I think probably sounded good when they were doing them, but you look back at that last 20 or 30 years and it's really hard to see that Coastal Highway has gotten, significantly better. I mean, obviously it's still the most dangerous road for cyclists in the state, even though we've been doing all this tinkering around the edges. So a little concerned that this is, more tinkering and not something, I mean, I really want the SR1 low stress bikeway project moving ahead, which I see as the long-term solution.
But we're getting nowhere with that. We're getting nowhere. So we can't, like some of the parameters we're working in, we cannot interrupt any traffic flow. We can't create any delay. So, and then we go to the communities. None of the communities are like, oh no, we don't want that. We don't want that in our, no, we're going to fight this. We're getting nowhere. So here's what you got. You either got to wait till the whole road gets redesigned in a complete street fashion, or you take this little safety improvement. If you don't take that, you really don't have anything.
So the SR1 low stress bikeway study is at a standstill.
So we're focused on the intersections now, and we're debating with legislators on whether or not we can create a 4-second delay when somebody presses a push button.
But the bikeways are not moving. They're at a standstill.
So we got a public meeting coming up. So I want to say it's the 15th or 20th. Munchie Branch. We're trying to focus on 3 different areas along Route 1 where we can try to get some connectivity and crossings so that people are at least be able to cross safety or safer in their sub areas. That's what we're focusing on now.
And the bikeways are kind of on hold on the back.
Next phase.
Next phase.
Yes. Hey, Anthony, maybe this is the same question, but the paths that we were talking about running parallel, like behind behind the stores and all that bit, which I've actually been kind of bushwhacking myself and figuring out, quite frankly, you can pretty much get a lot of the way there, but most of the people don't know it, that you can do by bicycle or by car. Have you any success with signage or permission to establish that as a safer alternative to being out on Route 1?
So we haven't had a whole lot of interaction with some of those property owners. We are focusing on connecting some of the parking lots, and that's where we really hit snags.
Have you been I mean, I get that, so I mean, I think we all know this, right? There's sort of an asymmetry between in my experience anyway, between commercial property owners and residential property owners, with the latter being often much more skeptical about building the kind of infrastructure that we want. Have you had any discussions with the commercial property owners?
So the commercial property owners don't like providing, I don't know, they provide access already. You could do it, but they don't like to promote people riding behind their businesses where there might be trucks loading, unloading, or other things going on, especially after hours. They don't want to, they're nervous about that and the liability that may occur there.
It's liability that will occur. That promotes crime. It's called robbery.
So the way it's my understanding, the way you can address, one of the ways you can address, concerns about liability is they give a public agency an easement.
Yeah, a shared easement, so they would still ride or have vehicles riding on there, and then I don't think we'd want to entertain that.
No, I mean an easement for a designated bikeway.
So I don't think we would be able to afford a lot of that.
Mostly when you think they'd be asking for money for an easement?
For commercial easement in the Route 1 corridor, I do.
So James, this is just a suggestion, but can we make this an agenda item for the next meeting?
I think that'd be great.
The better question is to ask Anthony or John, because somebody has to address it. It ain't gonna be you, me, or James.
The reason is we have 7 minutes till the end of the meeting.
Oh.
And we're not gonna finish the discussion by then. It's obviously an important discussion.
I agree with you.
And we do need to get the people lined up that can talk about it.
So yeah, we could definitely represent what we present at the public workshop at your next meeting.
And Anthony, I'm sorry, when's your public workshop?
The 15th.
And what day of the week is that?
Tuesday or Wednesday.
I mean, to me, it seems like our responsibility as the council is to try to help build some support for the department's efforts. They're trying to do something, and they're running into legislative walls and public walls. So,
and Anthony, you probably wouldn't mind having some friendlier voices down there in that public workshop, right?
Oh no, that'd be good. That'd be fine.
Yeah. Where is it, Anthony?
That one's at
Cape and Lopin High School Library, right?
Correct. And we're doing So we have a project on Munchie Branch that's going to be part of that. The low stress, because there's a lot going on. The low stress bikeway study. There's a hazard elimination project on Munchie Branch and Route 1. They're going to be there. And then there's going to be another docks project to the west. So we're trying to paint a picture of all the bicycle facilities that could happen if people get in line and support them. So yeah.
What time on the June the 15th?
5 to 7. I'll have John send the meeting invite or the meeting notice to you guys.
Thank you. I'll be there.
And then the following on the 20th, we have the Georgetown, the Lewis and the Lewis Bike Plan meeting. That's at the Lewis Library.
Anthony, I got a place down in Lewis now, so I got a stake in that.
Awesome.
I got a comment before we close up here. John, you asked me about the Cape Gazette trail guides.
Yes.
Okay, I've got 2 bundles that I've got to pick up from the Cape Gazette. I'll drop them off to you when I'm in Dover. I'll put them at the Del Dot front desk. Does anybody else want any?
What is it?
Trail guide? Trail guide. Yeah, just when you do that, you let me know and I'll pick them up.
I will. I'll be up there within the next week.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Any objections?
So move, make it quick, dude.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you in 2 months. We know what we'll be talking about.